All right, everyone. It was an interesting time for Twitter for the last few days between the NPC purge and other, general purges that they've been doing. By the way, YouTube supposedly right now, and I haven't confirmed this anecdotally, but I've seen enough people that I would trust, like Matt and Blonde said that it definitely happened. I think Medicare was mentioning it. It appears that Google moderators are now at least sporadically deleting comments within live chats. I find this disturbing. Most people have set moderators for those, and those that haven't have done so for a reason. For instance, I don't care if people say offensive things on my live stream. I really don't give a fuck because that doesn't offend me. Anyone else that's offended, they shouldn't be on a libertarian channel to begin with. They should go. They need to go listen to some, fucking propaganda from CNN or something. They'll definitely micro-moderate everything that's said there. You can't say shit without them saying so, and so you can't actually question the fact that they're goofy. But Twitter has banned wired sources again. You'd see they had a second account that they sort of piggybacked onto sourced reports. That's been banned too now. I did a video on it before, and the reason why this is newsworthy to me, this is actually a group that I used in part to aggregate material. This is a news aggregation handle that is vaguely political in nature. Yeah, obviously means goes against the liberals. I guess that's why they got kicked off. Now, the initial report from Wired itself, Wired sources, and there's another one called Wired Report or something else that they're not affiliated with in any way, and they actually had a disclaimer about that because they hated them, I guess, because they're far left. The initial reason why they were kicked off appears to have been related to copyright or branding issues or something like that. Twitter had kicked them off. They were appealing that and being like, hey, we didn't steal anything from anyone, and 90% of their posts are literally nothing more than, here's an article, here's our brief sentence or two summarizing it. That's basically it. That's what Wired Sources was, basically a news aggregation Twitter service. That I happen to enjoy. It happens to be because Twitter is in real time, it can be good for news aggregation, or at least it could until they started purging every worthy outlet of news, every worthy outlet that delved into politics. Now it's basically worthless as a news aggregator. I'm sitting there looking at more and more people that I would actually get like a story or a tip from and getting kicked off the platform. Meanwhile, I think Wired is on Gab, so it's like, who fucking gives a shit at this point? Twitter's so vestigial. Like, I'm sitting there struggling to hit 50K on Twitter, despite the fact that I was shooting up very quickly for a long time. Meanwhile, I'm like soaring ahead on Minds and Gab. It's like eventually it'll get to the point where I've got more people following my work on Steemit, so I really don't give a fuck at this point. But the thing is, they stood up to the harassment, which is really what it was. It was probably an example of brigading. They sat there for days appealing. Apparently they got bored with waiting for an actual response, so they're like, okay, this is illegitimate, we've already appealed it, I don't know what the fuck Twitter expects us to do, we got a job to do here, we give out news, so we're going to go onto this other account. And this is a lot like the Facebook purge is affecting. Primarily, you'd think of groups like CopBlock. Not exactly a right-wing group, if you know what I'm saying. What is happening in Silicon Valley is that they are slowly attempting to destroy all alternative forms of information. They're doing that because virtually all alternative media forms are against multinational sort of corporatism. Well, Silicon Valley is number one when it comes to these things. There is no enclave on Earth that's more uniquely and individually successful at being corporatized than Silicon Valley. For all of their bluster about speech, and being like the stewards of speech, and we're going to have a debate about the future of, basically the expression online. Bullshit. They've already made up their minds. For the most part, they don't want liberty. Now, it's not political, specifically speaking. It is money related. If you are a for-profit, multinational, multi-billion, sometimes trillion-dollar corporate entity with your hands in the pockets of people around the world, you use like Apple does, you use slave labor in China. You're a multinational firm, you have no specific national loyalty. You are not going to want small business competition. You don't want accountability. You don't even want environmental accountability. There's a reason why the left has been basically propagandized into abandoning that mostly as an issue. No, you want things that will destroy your competitors. Whenever possible, you're going to try to manipulate governments to do that. This is why I believe in a more constrained government, because governments are being used as a cudgel by groups that now, in some cases, have more power than the governments themselves. These people have so much fantastic wealth that they're capable of literally buying and selling a senator anytime they want. They are colluding together. They are not competing with each other. They are explicitly cooperating. So is the corporate media. They're all in bed together. The amount of actual power and the amount of control over human communication between two separate poles, Silicon Valley and the corporate media worldwide, whether it's specifically corporatized or state co-opted, that's virtually all human communication. The corporate media wants to crack down on the alt media and on news aggregators and on anonymous posting and on memes, on everything interesting and independent under the sun, because we're out competing them. Silicon Valley, meanwhile, in partnership with them, wants to do the same thing because we're challenging these corporate trusts, which is what they have devolved into. Now, the interesting thing is, if they were still competing, they'd probably be further ahead. In a healthier free market, at least one of these groups would say, no, we're not going to censor things at all, and they'd be growing more quickly. The other groups thus would probably end up doing the same. It would literally be like a competition to see who can have the most free speech while not destabilizing their own platforms. Instead, because of government control, because of too much government allowing them to do this, they simply form a trust. They're like, oh, we don't even need to. Nobody else can compete with us. As long as you're friends with a half a dozen ISPs, a handful of domain registrars, Cloudflare and PayPal, and a few others, yeah, we can do whatever we want. No upstart competitor can ever gain any real traction. And when they do gain traction, what happens? No, they get attacked by the corporate media. I wonder why. I wonder why that possibly happens. It's totally in a vacuum. There's no collusion, no coordination. They're not fighting on the same side. No, they're all competing in shit. Yeah, CNN and MSNBC really compete a whole lot. The New York Times and the Atlantic, they attack one another constantly for viewership. Facebook and Twitter at this point, they really compete. No, they don't. They don't compete. They try to complement one another and mesh together even more. I happen to think V.A. Shiva is very wise for suggesting maybe a mesh-style internet, more decentralization, a public option for things to force. Let Silicon Valley hammer people if it wants. Create a public option. Having a public option that's explicitly governed by the Constitution, that the government can abuse people using it, oddly enough, because the government itself administers it. If you have such a public option, it would force Silicon Valley to grapple with the fact that a large proportion of the population doesn't want to be censored, aren't a bunch of fragile snowflakes, and it would deflate their propaganda that's aimed at trying to kick people up into a frenzy to support that. They're not doing it for benevolent reasons. They're not doing it because they care if you're offensive, or if someone's hateful, or if someone gets hurt. They never cared before. You think they all of a sudden grew a conscience? Yeah, those multi-million-dollar businesses, they never had a conscience. All of a sudden, though, as soon as they became worth many billions, all of a sudden they cared. No, it's for fiscal reasons. When there were hundreds of them, when there were hundreds or thousands of businesses, even in subgenres of the internet competing, of course they're going to be libertarians. They're going to be cutthroats. They're trying to rob each other's audience. They are competing. That's what kept the internet free and open. Now it's stagnant. Now a half a dozen companies determine whether you exist or not fundamentally on the internet. There are starting to be a few rumblings of people who want to do something about this. I favor an internet bill of rights. I favor extending the basic protections of the rudiments of the First and Fourth Amendment simply to corporations involved with human communication that have a certain market cap, a certain share within some sub-market. That's what I favor. Short of that, yeah, creating a public option to increase competition would probably be a good idea. Short of that, I suppose, breaking up their trusts and monopolies basically and cracking them apart. But that's a temporary fix. That injects a little bit of competition very short term, and then they will buy their way out of it anyway. So I don't really support that. The public utility concept is like tertiary compared to the public option or an internet bill of rights. If we work hard enough, we can get that internet bill of rights if we want to. Take the form of a simple bill. Look, businesses involved in human communication are too important. If they don't want to be labeled public utilities and micromanaged and regulated, if they don't want to be fucked by Uncle Sam, then they should stop censoring people. Stop algorithmically manipulating people. If you're worried about foreign interference into our political system, let the intel agencies handle. Go ahead and work with the intel agencies. You don't need to do it yourself. You are corporations. Your job's to make money, not to determine what people should believe. That's about all. Peace out.